Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of EOR Payroll and Beyond. I have with me Preet Kamal Gupta. She is the managing director, global director now for ProClose. What we are going to be covering today is another interesting episode, which is going to be on payroll in Australia for non Australian companies. Uh, the objective for this particular episode revolves around the fact that we will be talking about explaining the challenges and what are the solutions for non-Australian businesses managing payroll in Australia. So, welcome, Preet.
Hi, Mohit. Lovely to meet you.
Same here, just like old
Great.
times.
Yes, always.
Excellent. So, we've had a couple of episodes in the past, Preet,
Yeah.
and I think this would probably also shed light for the companies which are not based in Australia, but they
Hmm.
still want to kind of manage payroll in Australia. So, how about we dive right into it?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. So we will start with the first question, which is if a company outside Australia wants to hire locally, and what payroll challenges might they face?
Right. Okay. See, payroll in itself globally is a very interesting topic, and there is lots and lots of information that is there. But particularly if we are talking about Australia in this particular episode, then specifically for non-Australian companies, if they want to start business locally or they want to start hiring locally for any foreign company, a local knowledge related to payroll compliances is the most important part. So there are few challenges related to setting up the entity, and it's important to know what registrations are required with the Australian Taxation Office. Mainly, the first point is setting up your entity and getting that information from the Australian Taxation Office. And there are obviously other departments as well to act
Mhm.
as an employer and also run payroll compliantly in Australia. So generally, what happens is that even if they are a foreign company, they will have to register as an employer in most of the cases. And other important factors are related to the payroll, which we will obviously discuss in the next questions in more details. But typically they are like superannuation slash pension, payroll taxes, employment standards, etc., etc.
Got it. Got it. So just going back to the fact that this is for the companies which are not based out of Australia, and they want
Correct.
to manage payroll, right?
Hmm.
But let's say in a situation like this, can a foreign company run payroll in Australia without setting up a local entity?
They have to set up a local entity. They even if their base is going to be overseas, they still need to run if they have to run payroll in Australia. The direct payroll is required. It's not permitted, so they have to have registrations for registrations like Australian business number, a WPN or a TFN to run that business.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so
And
typically what I meant was that they cannot directly run a payroll without actually setting up an entity in Australia.
got it, got it. So
Yeah,
regardless of the fact that whether it's a foreign company or an Australian company, they need
yeah.
to have a legal entity over there, and
Hmm.
only post that they can actually manage payroll.
That's
Cool,
right,
makes
because
sense.
they have to prove that they are an employer, if they are paying people in Australia.
Got it, got it. So and now moving on to the next one, what are some common missteps
Hmm.
international businesses make when handling Australian payroll?
See, missteps, they usually occur when you don't have enough knowledge. In this particular case, any lack of local knowledge or non-compliance with any regulations of Australian legislation is where the problem comes. So the businesses must know that you cannot withhold taxes or make super contributions without relevant registrations. Like I said in my previous answer as well, that you must have those certain registrations in place with a taxation department and with other relevant industry departments to make sure that you're running the payroll in Australia compliantly. So there are heavy penalties for non-compliances, not just for tax offices, but the other regulatory authorities as well.
Got it. Cool. That kind of gives me a fair understanding of how
Hmm.
foreign companies can essentially come in and manage their employees over there and the payroll and the classifications and the missteps, whatever.
Yeah.
But then, how do payroll tax and social security obligations differ for foreign companies? Because I understand that there are different taxations which
Hmm.
are state specific and central specific, but then I believe there is a category specifically for foreign companies as well. So how does that effect come into play?
Right. So see, particularly for Australia, it does not matter you're a foreign company or you're a local company. You have to pay those statutory compliances to the employees or to the state government as well, or to the federal government as well. So any company which is running payroll in Australia must comply with the payroll tax and social security obligations, particularly for this to answer this question. So payroll tax is basically a state and territory based tax, so it is not governed nationally. It is based on where the business is located or where the business is operating. And it is typically on the wages paid by an employer, and obligations differ based on, if they are, for example, in New South Wales, or if they are in Queensland, or if the work is performed in Victoria, or for that matter, in any other state in Australia as well. So it's basically a business tax that must be paid to the relevant state. There are different thresholds and rates which apply to where you are registered and where you have to pay those obligations in particular state. Um, and similarly, the social security in Australia is the superannuation, which generally is the pension. So employers
Right.
must contribute a certain percentage of each eligible employee's ordinary time earnings, which is, in Australian terms, OTE, into a superannuation fund or a complying self-managed fund. So this is this is a mandatory employer contribution for all employees working in Australia. It doesn't matter if you are a foreign company or you're a local company. You have to comply with those obligations. Even if, even if you think that as a foreign company, you may be exempt for certain regulations, but no, these are very typical and stringent laws in Australia that you must follow to do your payroll compliantly. And
I,
there is a lot that we can talk about on this, and I'm sure we have more episodes coming where we'll discuss about these topics separately. But just to answer here, for example, just to give you a quick example, that currently for this financial year 25-26, the current rate of superannuation guarantee is 12%, which the employers
got it.
must pay on the ordinary time earnings of the employees.
Understood. Understood. Makes sense. So now this kind of brings me to the next question, which is, what are the key differences in payroll obligations for Australian employees versus contractors?
Right. I think this is a very, very important question. A typical example of a good question, and understanding the difference between an employee versus a contractor is crucial, as they both fall under different tax obligations. First of all, superannuations, employment law compliances, and any other financial or legal obligations that a business has in Australia. So, to start with, an employee is hired under an employment contract, for example. So that's a very basic concept, that if you're an employee, you're hired, you will sign an employment agreement with your employer. Whereas a service agreement is put in place if you are a contractor. So all those other obligations like superannuation, payroll taxes, your workers' compensation, etc., are paid and are applied as per the classification. So if you are classified as an employee, your obligations or your entitlements will be according to that. And if you are classified as a contractor, then those obligations obviously are different from what an employee is entitled to. So a business must handle all the payroll administration for an employee, but for a contractor, generally, an individual's business is responsible for any services performed under their Australian business number. So they usually issue an invoice for the service that they would perform. So that's the major difference between those two classifications.
Got it. So moving on, how does working with an EOR or payroll provider simplify operations for non-Australian companies? So I understand that there's so many nuances, and
Hmm.
specifically talking about payroll has a different can of worms altogether. Then
Yeah.
EOR obviously has its own set of regulations and rules, but
Hmm.
then how does it help for companies which are not based out of Australia to actually work with an EOR or a payroll provider,
Hmm.
which may
Right.
simplify operations for them.
Right. I think the key word, the key answer is in your question as well. It simplifies the operations. That is the main thing that I'd pick here. So working with any employer of record, which is an EOR or a specialized payroll provider in Australia offers all these foreign companies or non-Australian companies a very streamlined path and a process to hiring from onboarding to terminations or any such compliances which are part of that process in Australia, specifically, when they do not have any prior experience around the Australian legislation. Because I understand, EOR and payroll, they are the global terms and the basic knowledge is the same. But yes, then again, the region specifically that you are doing your business in,
Hmm.
you must have, the local knowledge of that region. So for example, an EOR acts as a legal employer for the end client overseas. In this case,
Right.
you asked a non-Australian company. So end client is a non-Australian company who is based
Hmm.
overseas. And a payroll service provider maintains the multiple payroll administrative tasks along with the wages filing or any other compliances which go to either Australian taxation office or any of those payroll tax departments. So what I what I'd like to say is that outsourcing these services allow these businesses who are based overseas to focus on their core businesses, to their core goals or to their core everyday um, business needs that they have, while they shift all their administrative burden and compliances risks to the local experts. Because in this case, what happens is it reduces the cost of the setup because they're not actually through an EOR, not actually setting up the company in Australia or an
Right.
office in Australia. They're just, hiring an EOR to act on their behalf as employer of record. So same way, the outsourced payroll provider also manages their risks. And uh, so both of these EOR or a local payroll provider will majorly expedite the registration and hiring processes as well for these foreign companies who do not have either local knowledge or who do not want to have their local setup just yet.
Got it. Makes sense. So basically, it kind of simplifies all the compliance related queries,
Hmm.
and ensures that you're on point the same way that it does for EOR.
Hmm.
Outsourcing the work to a payroll provider would essentially do the same, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of sets you up for ease of working, I would say, because as you said, rightfully said, that the fact is that you focus on your core goals and
Yeah.
think of expanding your business and not about these compliances, which obviously a local expert can better take care of it.
Exactly, because this is not, a very straightforward process. Doesn't matter what you're doing, if it's you're hiring somebody under EOR or you are hiring an outsourced payroll provider, the process is not simple. So that's why it's always important to ask for help and support of these experts locally.
Cool. So moving forward, now this is the insider news that I would probably want to
Hmm.
pick from you, because since you're based out of Australia and New Zealand,
Yeah.
any upcoming regulatory changes that non-Australian businesses should be aware of that you can
Hmm.
shed some light on?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is uh, a very important, we are in a very important part of the year where these kind of changes they take place, because usually what happens is the departments, the Australian financial year, I'm not sure if you're aware, Australian financial year runs from July to June, and there are
Hmm.
usually certain changes or updates that relevant departments they share during the year, throughout the year they will keep sending you updates that these changes will happen from the next financial year, which will start from 1st of July each year. So the
Got it.
major regulatory change that may be coming to Australia this year, starting obviously from next year. So we have been hearing about this for a long time, but um, very recently there's been news that legislation may pass, which is related to superannuation in Australia. So it is going to be called a payday super. So currently, the businesses or employers pay super at least quarterly, but the new reform, which may take effect from 1st of July 2026, from that financial year, requires employers to pay employee superannuation contributions at the same time as their salary and wages are paid instead of paying it quarterly. So payday super is the same day paying the super. So that is going to be a very major legislative change that is going to take place, and employers must ensure contributions reach the employee superannuation fund within 7 business days of payday. So there are very specific legislative changes that are happening. and we are all making sure that we are all up to date, and we are all keeping our softwares up to date, our payroll softwares up to date, and any other regulations that needs changes. We're all working on that, and we are waiting for a final news from the government to understand when we have to start making those changes. So specifically for the non-Australian businesses, this is going to be very crucial, and they must make sure that they're using the companies or the payroll providers who actually have those updated systems in place, so they do not have any errors or there is no manual work. Because like I said, it must hit employees account in 7 days. So that's a major change, and there are major cash flow changes that will happen within the companies itself as well.
Got it. Got it. So this is just for the listeners, Preet. I would like to highlight over here that we have covered superannuation in the previous episodes when we talked
Yes.
about EOR in Australia. Do visit our podcast and give it a listen. You'll be able to understand what exactly superannuation would probably mean over here. Uh,
Hmm.
Moving on, Preet, I think this is something which I would say an insider news that you get local expertise from on the ground in terms of what is
Yeah.
happening, what kind of changes
Hmm.
that are
I think on
happening.
this point, just before we move on to the next one, I think it's also important
Mhm.
to just have a quick recap as well of what has actually happened in last couple of months as well, because we are um, not too far in this financial year.
Right.
So this financial year, ATO also started paying superannuation on government-funded paid parental leave, which was also a very important aspect of additional benefits that employees are going to get. And there was a major change in the national minimum wage, which was increased by 3.5%, which impacts employees' salaries, their allowances, or their penalty rates as well. So it's always important to keep yourself up to date. So the local companies like Proclose, they have that kind of expertise that they are always up to date. So outsourcing your work to these kind of companies is gives you peace of mind, so you do not have to do any manual work or pay any penalties for any non-compliance.
Got it. Got it. But I would, moving on to the next question, I would probably want to take the last one first and the next one in the last phase. So, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to an international company hiring in Australia for the first time?
Okay, right. I think there is so much that you have to make sure that you are aware of when you are actually doing this. And I'm
Mhm.
sure by now you can imagine how vast and complex the local legislation is. Like, we have been talking so much about the stringent laws in Australia in all our other episodes as well. So yes, there are quite a
Absolutely.
few regulations, that must be followed when any international company hires in Australia. But the single most crucial advice to is which is very, very important, and I've already touched base in my previous answers as well, is to avoid misclassifying workers as
Right.
independent contractors when they are legally considered employees. We have to make sure either they are the deemed employees, or they are the independent contractors, or they are specifically employees. So getting this wrong can actually lead to significant financial penalties or legal obligations for any business, and there are major, major legal actions as well. That's why uh, I wanted to say it again and again, that it's extremely important that you have that local and expert knowledge. So please seek local expert support and guidance if you have any gaps in knowledge.
And I believe you're right on point, Preet, because as we have covered multiple times in the previous episodes as well,
Yeah.
misclassification can have serious legal and financial
Mm.
implications. So
Yeah.
it's always better to kind of have somebody local, somebody who is an expert on the ground to help you with all those nuances and ensure that there are no misclassifications happening, as you have rightly mentioned. So
Yeah.
last but not the least, how does ProClose support foreign businesses in managing payroll seamlessly in Australia?
Right. So we've already talked about what Proclose does globally, and particularly for payroll, Proclose is an established payroll provider globally, including Australia, obviously. So we help foreign businesses manage payroll seamlessly by providing one, expertise in the local regulations, then managing their compliances, handling complex payroll functions. See, there are so many. interpretation of modern awards and the wages and so many regulations that keep on changing. So we make sure that we have all that in place in house so we can provide the best quality services to all our clients as well. So we also offer the administrative support, including any relevant tax payments or any HR support as well, along with those payroll services. So as Australian regulations are complex, we keep talking about that. Working with a local payroll provider allows foreign companies or businesses to hire staff in Australia without any burden of legislative challenges. That is, I think this is where you avoid any risks of any penalties or any legal impacts. Um, so I think as a payroll provider and as uh, and also helping businesses manage their payroll seamlessly in Australia, the major part is paying the workers accurately and on time. I think that's the priority of any employer or a business, to make sure that everyone's paid on time. So, on behalf of the foreign businesses, we look after any local registrations, any entity setups, and all other business compliances as well. Our support is basically customized, based on, because in Australia, like I said, there are certain regulations which are statewide and there are certain regulations which are federal. So we make sure that our support is customized based on what a particular client needs, and in this particular case, payroll. So that's what our expertise in is in as well. And we make sure that the support is provided and the guide is provided as per where the business is located, or where the business will have the major operations in this region.
Got it. Got it. Cool. That kind of wraps it up, guys. And I would like to thank you, Preet, again for being a part of this amazing podcast series that we are kind of concluding by the next episode. And probably we'll look at the next series of episodes, which is
Mhm.
probably going to focus on other countries and see where it goes from there.
Yes,
Uh,
sure.
that's it from my side, guys. Thank you so much, Preet. Thank you for coming in, and have a great
Problem
day
at
ahead.
all. Thank you for having me, Mohit.